Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power and Politics here on News 12. I'm Kurt Sumder. Well, thousands of people across the country are taking to the streets to protest immigration enforcement raids, and those raids have been happening right here at home. ICE operations on Long Island are causing widespread fear in our communities, as we know federal agents are operating in both counties. Now, joining me right now is the Deputy Speaker of the New York State Assembly, Phil Ramos. Deputy Speaker, thanks so much for being here with us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I want to get right into what's been going on here on Long Island. And given the increase that we've seen in ICE activity, how would you describe the level of fear and concern amongst the immigrant community here on the island?
Well, there is a lot of fear and concern throughout our communities and throughout the whole country. We're seeing a national pattern of abuse across the country, from the streets of Los Angeles to the suburbs of Long Island. ICE is operating like a rogue military force, not a law enforcement agency. And the president originally came out and he spoke about, his immigration policies, and he spoke about criminals. Something that most people don't have a problem with is deporting somebody who's committed a crime. But the problem is that his false narrative that most immigrants are criminals really has not given him the numbers that he wants to deliver. So there are not enough criminals in the immigrant community for him to deport 3,000 a day. So he has to now further move the goalposts, and now he's going after people who are just here to wash dishes and take care of somebody's child and feed their family, and demonizing them as if they're some kind of scourge of the earth, and criminalizing them. And then on Long Island, we have had violations of civil rights of U.S. citizens. We've had U.S. citizens on Long Island, Hispanic, being taken into custody in this campaign of racial profiling throughout the streets. And it's shameful that any police department would cooperate with this. And, we're seeing the same pattern of lies to the community coming from some local officials as well. As you see, some say they're not cooperating, but they actually are. Others say that, they're just providing logistical support, but actually they're on the street helping with the racial profiling. They're not pulling over white people, they're pulling over brown people. And this whole issue is not about criminals. It's not about going by the law. It's not by going by the rules. It's about the browning of the United States. That is why we're seeing these efforts.
You mentioned that U.S. citizens have been confronted by ICE agents. A Hispanic man from Brentwood, your district, was detained. Have you spoken with him or with anyone else who has been confronted by ICE agents this past week?
I have, and I'm the first one who brought this to light. I found out about this in my district. I brought it to Fred Brewington, and we had a press conference yesterday about that, showing a young man, a passenger in a car. He wasn't even a driver, where you could, a police officer can ask for the license. Remember, I was a police officer for 20 years, and I know what one has a right to do as a police officer and what they shouldn't do. And this young man said, no, please let me know. First off, let me know who you are. The ICE agents would not identify themselves. And because he asserted his rights, he was yanked out of a car, illegal search and seizure. They went into his pocket. They actually shut off his video, which is a constitutional right. They're trampling over the rights of everybody. This was a U.S. citizen. And I don't know how anybody can look at what's happening in this country, applaud children being ripped out of the arms of women, of their mothers, and think this is a good thing for this country. We must open our eyes and see what's happening here.
To that point, if someone is approached by an ICE agent, what should they do? What is the course of action?
Well, if they're number one, I would say turn on your video immediately. That's the one protection that people have, and that's the one right that people have. And that is, although in this case they violated their rights, but for the most part, videos have really protected a lot of people because videos don't lie. Secondly, they don't have an obligation to speak to anybody, and especially a U.S. citizen gets pulled over. They can say, officer, if I've committed a crime, arrest me. If I have not, I have nothing to say to you. And there should not be any retaliation, and they can't legally be any penalty or arrest for not showing your identification. This is not in New York State. You don't have to show your ID unless they have probable cause that you committed a crime. So we're not in a country like many communist countries and like Nazi Germany, where police can come up to you and say, show me your papers for no reason whatsoever. And then if you don't cooperate, that becomes a crime. Is this the kind of country we want to live in?
Deputy Speaker, there are other impacts here as well. The local economy has been impacted when we talk about this, whether we talk about people being afraid to go to work. We've mentioned people being afraid to go to food pantries and that sort of situation. Long Island farmers are losing longtime employees as a result of this. What do you think is going to happen to them, and what do you think will be the impact on the local economy?
It has a great impact on our economy. And not only ours, look at Florida. Florida can't find labor for construction. Florida, a place that was famous for housing that was very cheap, and the influx of people from other states going there, they can't. Now the housing market is going up. The prices are going up because they can't find labor. On Long Island, you have typically conservative lobbies. For instance, every chamber of commerce on Long Island relies on immigrant help to work in their kitchens and to work, in the different factories, everything. They're all going to be hurt. And these are Republican aligned organizations. The farm lobby, which also statewide conservative lobby, they cannot function without immigrant labor. Now, those people who are applauding this and think they have no skin in the game, when the price of their food goes up, when the price of everything goes up because they don't have the immigrant labor working, then they do have some skin in the game because their cost of living is going to triple. When they have to pay somebody $50 an hour to mow their lawn, then they're going to see the skin in the game that they have. Immigrants are something that revitalize the economy of our country. You take that away, you're taking out a basic foundation of what makes this country great.
Is there a balance that can be struck between what's going on with ICE right now and ICE's need to enforce the federal immigration laws?
If ICE has a judicial warrant and there's been a legal process, then they have every right to do what they have to do, is go after a specific immigrant who's committed a crime, or for whatever reason a judge has deemed them deportable. They have a right to do that. But to stand on our streets and pull over everybody who has brown skin and expect them to ID themselves, and if they don't, they get brutalized. That is things that we see in Venezuela and other in communist countries, and something that's un-American. And a lot of people talk about that they just want immigrants to go by the rules, and it's so hypocritical, that argument, because people will say, my grandfather came here and he had $20 in his pocket and he pulled himself up by the bootstraps and nobody helped him. And what they don't tell you is 25 million immigrants came to this country, white immigrants from Europe. In the early 1900s, not one of them needed a visa. A doctor looked in their mouth with a flashlight, and if they weren't sick, they were allowed in. And the same rules have never applied to people of color. They had the Asian Exclusion Act. If you were Asian and born here, you couldn't be American. You had Operation Wetback, where they deported thousands of Mexicans who were born in California, in Nevada, in Arizona. So please don't tell us about the same rules. And if you want us to go by the rules, then give us the same rules that your grandfather had. But don't give us this hypocritical argument.
Deputy Speaker Phil Ramos, thank you so much for being here with us this week on Power and Politics.
Thank you very much.